Just a day after playing Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks, rumors are already starting to spread and reports are starting to spread about Luka Doncic's teammate, Jalen Brunson, potentially being a high target on the Detroit Pistons free agency list. Will he be a good fit? We'll talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you're one of the 50% of people who watch us on YouTube, or you're simply listening to it on the podcast and haven't checked us out on YouTube, head over to Locked On Pistons on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support the podcast. We're on the road to 3,000 subscribers. We're trying to show Locked On that we are the best and fastest growing fan base at the Locked On Network. So again, if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel, Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. So we're going to talk about Jalen Brunson and these reports that are coming out. Also later on, we have a little bit of a mailbag. I'm going to answer some of the questions that you guys have sent in over the final two segments of the podcast. But first, we obviously have to talk about these reports that are coming out about Jalen Brunson. So it was reported about on the 7th, which will be yesterday for most of you guys who are listening to this, that the Pistons have real interest in Jalen Brunson. This report was coming from The Athletic, James Edwards of The Athletic, the Pistons beat writer. The Pistons have real interest in Jalen Brunson. This is something that's been talked about. I don't feel like this is much of a shock to anybody. I think it's kind of been rumored for a few months now that the Pistons would be interested in Jalen Brunson. It was never just like a flat out report. It was a bunch of rumors or whatever. But with one of the Pistons beat writers reporting this, I think you can kind of put that in stone that the Pistons legitimately, it's real. It's not just rumors. The Pistons legitimately are interested in Jalen Brunson. And it sounds like he's going to be one of the guys that they go after this offseason. But first, I think something else has to happen before that interest develops into anything else, possibly offering him a contract. So we'll talk about Jalen Brunson as a player and his fit on this team and whether I like his fit. But I just want you guys to understand that the draft comes before free agency. And where the Pistons end up in that draft and who's off the board and who they end up taking will likely determine what they do in free agency. So like, for example, let's say they fall to 3 or they end up with 4 or something, whatever. I'm just starting my base level scouting and looking at mock drafts, whatever. So I don't have an absolute amazing grasp of this. But let's say they get Jaden Ivey at like number 4 or whatever. Maybe he falls to 4. He's the 4th overall pick and they get him there. I highly doubt that they'll be going after Jalen Brunson then in free agency because they'll be at the exact same position and they'll want to spend their money elsewhere. Now, if they end up in a higher part of the draft, 1, 2, or 3, and they end up taking Holmgren or Banchero or someone else, one of the bigger guys, then obviously I think they probably would still be interested in Jalen Brunson and want to go after him. But the draft is before free agency, so before you can really pencil in guys that they'll be going after, you really have to see where the Pistons. I think, honestly, I don't think you have to wait till the draft to see who they pick. I think it really will like set the table once the lottery happens and you see where the Pistons will be selecting, because then you could get a pretty good idea of who will be there, who likely they'll want to take. But you have to wait until then, because if they get Jaden Ivey, like I said, they probably won't be going after Jalen Brunson. It wouldn't make much sense. So I just want to get that out the way first. So now, Jalen Brunson, the player, is he good? He's a pretty damn good player. So I've got his synergy chart up right now. Let me just read you some of his stats. So as a pick and roll ball handler this season, which is by far his highest play type, most possessions, 391 possessions of it, which is really big sample size. As a pick and roll ball handler, he's in the 91st percentile. Synergy ranks that as excellent. As a spot up shooter, 83rd percentile, excellent. Isolation, 62nd percentile, good. Handoff, 75th percentile, very good. Transition, 42nd percentile, he's average at that. But if you just keep scrolling down, he's a really good scorer and really good shooter. All jump shots, 68th percentile. Runners, 93rd percentile. Around the basket, not including post-ups, 60th percentile. Heck, even as he doesn't have much of a sample size with this, but he does it, a little bit. And he's actually a pretty good post-up guard for his size at 6'3", 190. They have him in the 74th percentile in post-ups, but he looks like he's just a really good scorer. And if you've watched the Mavericks for the majority of this season, if you've like tuned into a lot of their games, you'll see that he's a really good scorer who is capable of scoring from all three levels on the floor. And you just keep going down a synergy chart. Catch and shoot, 83rd percentile, excellent. All jump shots off the dribble, 77th percentile, very good. And that's on 371 possessions. That's a large sample size of him taking shots off the dribble. So he's a tremendous scorer, really good guy. If you want someone with the ball in their hands to go get a bucket. However, does that fit next to Cade Cunningham? Well, I think it depends on what the Pistons want to put next to Cade. I mean, we've had this conversation on the podcast many of times. They can go the pure scorer route off ball with him, or they can go, the Killian Hayes archetype route, which I like that route, but it's probably because I have a little bit of a bias towards Killian Hayes. So there's different routes they can go, but if they want to have a scorer next to Cade Cunningham, a guy that can take some of the scoring pressure off of him, and handle the ball when Cade needs a rest, or simply not to keep all the load on him. We talked about this in the last podcast. I don't really want the Pistons to go a heliocentric offense with Cade and just ask him to do everything. So Jalen Brunson could certainly help with that and take some of the scoring load off of him. So I think it fits in that respect, obviously, and he would be a good pickup because he's a really good offensive player, and the Pistons really do need guys who can just flat out score sometimes. Like they haven't had that in a long time. They have it now with Cade, but they really do need just an efficient scorer, not someone who's an inefficient scorer, going to take up a lot of possessions like Jeremy has been. An efficient scorer who can score from all three levels and really just do the right things with the ball in their hand. So I think Jalen Brunson fits in that aspect. The one area that makes me not as big of a fan of this, if they signed him, I would like it. It would make sense, obviously. I'm not saying it wouldn't make sense. I wouldn't like it or something. But he's 6'3", 190 pounds. And I kind of like the flow that they've got going with. I'm not saying it has to be Killian starting next to him, by the way. I'm not saying an archetype like that. The switchability across all five positions. You got Cade, who's 6'6", Killian, who's 6'5", 6'6", 220. You got Sadiq, Jeremy, and even if you don't have Jeremy out there, they've been having Isaiah Livers out there with Isaiah Stewart. And if you draft someone else, I don't know who they're draft. We don't know yet, but Jabari Smith or Banchero. They have guys who are capable of switching across five positions. So I really like the fact that they've been doing that and kind of gives them versatility on the defensive end. Now, if you go and get Brunson, I don't think you'll be able to do that, obviously. He's undersized. He's 6'3", 190. He can't switch across positions like a guy like Killian Hayes can, or simply a better version of Killian Hayes, like any guy who's just taller and bigger who can play off ball with Cade. So I'm not saying that would just disqualify him for me, but it's definitely one of those things that I'm just for me, I would really like the Pistons to continue to play big and have those kind of lengthy, taller, bigger defenders, or not even just defenders, just simply bigger guys who are capable of switching across all five positions, keep them that kind of versatility, especially with how much they're switching already. Just it seems like every screen or any off-ball screen or anything, pin downs, the Pistons switch. So I don't know if that's something that's going to change moving forward, but with that kind of defensive scheme and overall just liking, seeing the way the NBA is and liking the ability to be able to switch across all five positions, that's just something that I would be concerned about a little bit. But I think he would be a great fit offensively. He's a great scorer. He can play with the ball in his hands. He can play with the ball without the ball in his hands, I should say. You guys saw that when we played the Dallas Mavericks a few nights ago. He didn't have the ball in his hands a lot, but he was still able to impact the game. So it'll be interesting this summer. Again, you have to watch for the draft lottery, watch for the draft, and if those things still line up to where they could get a guard in free agency, I think Jalen Brunson is going to be at the top of their free agent list, and I think it's likely they'll pursue him heavily. So we'll see what happens. I think he'll be a good fit offensively. Defensively, a little bit more of a question mark, but it depends how you want to go with the guy next to Cade, and it's going to be interesting to see which way they choose. So that's my thoughts on it. Let me know what you guys think about potentially adding Jalen Brunson and having him be the off guard next to Cade Cunningham. When we come back, we're going to start answering all the questions that you guys sent in for today's version of the mailbag episode. But first, we have to get into one of our sponsors. Let me tell you guys a little bit about BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championship odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action today. If you head over to betonline.net, you'll have the games for Thursday, April 7th. You're looking at the Memphis Grizzlies versus the Denver Nuggets. They got the over and under at 234 points. I'm going to go ahead and take the under that they will not combine for 234 points, which is at minus 120. That's what I would suggest for you guys to do. You guys don't have to take my advice, obviously. Also, if you head over to betonline.net, they already have odds for who will be the first overall pick in the NBA draft. They got Jabari Smith Jr. at minus 110. They got Chet Holmgren at plus 160, and they got Paolo Banchero at plus 300. Take that for what you will. But again, head over to betonline.net to have fun with all that kind of stuff. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device and learn more about their trends in action today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support the podcast. We're on our road to 3,000 subscribers. We're continuing to show Locked On that we're the best and fastest growing fan base at the Locked On Network. So again, I'd really appreciate it if you guys went over to the Locked On Pistons YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. Again, I'd really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and get into some of you guys' questions, though. If you guys want to be heard on the podcast, I've told you guys this many of times. If you have a Twitter, simply tweet at me. When I tweet out the mailbag asking for questions, tweet at me. You guys get heard that way. You guys can go on the YouTube channel, type questions in the comment section or over at our community post. You guys can find it that way. If you don't have access to either of those things, you're simply listening on the podcast. You guys can go, if you listen on Apple Podcasts, you guys can go down below in the reviews, leave a 5-star review, and leave a question in the comments, and I'll be sure to answer it that way. So those are all the different ways if you want to find your way onto a mailbag episode. But let's get into some of the questions. So we're going to start off with this question from Dan Favell. He's over at Bleacher Report. I'm sure a lot of you guys know who that is. Very popular person, writes at Bleacher Report. He asked this question, and this was really intriguing to me. So I wanted to answer this one first. He asked me, what's the more intriguing long-term weapon based on the past month or so? The Killian Hayes floater or the Saddiq Bey turnaround jumper? So I'm going to get called a hater for this because anytime I don't pick someone with Saddiq Bey, I get called a hater. But it is what it is. I'm taking the Killian Hayes floater. And it's not even just, I'm going to change the question a little bit. It's not even just the Killian Hayes floater. It's the Killian Hayes aggressiveness and the ability to get to the basket and get into that floater range and get to the basket. That is much, much, much more intriguing than Saddiq being able to hit a turnaround jumper. Because if Saddiq can't hit a turnaround jumper, he'll still be fine. He doesn't need to be able to hit these floater or these post-up turnaround jumpers. He doesn't need to be able to hit these, post-up moves or fadeaways in the mid-range or anything. Like, he doesn't need to do any of that to be a good player. He doesn't need to do any of that. He'll be fine. He can still hit outside shots at a high volume. He can still get to the rim and draw free throws. Like, that kind of stuff won't leave him. So the turnaround jumper doesn't have that big of an impact on Saddiq Bey's game. Killian Hayes, though, his game and his ability to last in this league and become the very good player that I believe he can become and what he's been showing us over the last month or so entirely is reliant on him being able to do what he's done the past month, which is get into that floater range, be aggressive with the floater, and be aggressive at the basket and get into the basket. If Killian can't do that, it's going to be hard for him to last in the league. It's going to be hard. He'll last in the league simply because of his defensive playmaking, but he'll never live up to the 7th overall pick. He'll never be a starter if he can't do that consistently. Now, we've seen him do it consistently over the past month or so, and that's what makes people really excited for it. If you guys know, I've mentioned him on the podcast before. You guys probably know who he is, but Nekias Duncan, he's a writer over at Basketball News. He writes on all kinds of stuff. I'm sure he's been on Bleacher Report. He covers Heat games. He's one of the credential media down there. He's an incredible follow. You guys should go check him out on Twitter. Or if you don't have a Twitter, just simply follow his work over at Basketball News. But he had just wrote an article, I believe 3 or 4 days ago, and it says 4 young guys who are turning heads and may be turning the corner. And the number one guy was Killian Hayes. So Killian Hayes is starting to catch the eye of guys across the league, national guys who watch basketball across the league. I'm not talking about big heads at ESPN who don't watch anything but the Lakers. I'm talking about actual guys who do analysis and take pride in their work. Killian Hayes is starting to catch their eye because of what he's been able to do over the past month. And everyone knows if he's able to do that, he has a chance to reach that number 7 potential. So it's not even close. It's not even close about which one's more intriguing and which one's more important. Saddiq Bey can live without the turnaround jump shot and still be a good to great player in the league without a turnaround jump shot. That doesn't make or break his ceiling. Killian Hayes, his floater and his ability to get to the rim and finish around there, that will make or break his potential. It's not even close. That's by far the most intriguing development we've seen over the past month. By far. It's not even close. Next question. I hope you guys agree with me with that. I don't think that one's a hot take. I don't think that could be turned any way into me hating on Saddiq Bey. But I don't know. Some people are crazy out there. You feel me? Let's go ahead and answer this next question from Kenton Gibbs on Twitter. What would be in your top 5 offseason moves wish list for the Detroit Pistons? All right. I don't think I have 5 because it's not. I don't have many. It's pretty simple. One, get a high quality free agent, whether that's Miles Bridges, whether that's DeAndre Ayton, whether that's Jalen Brunson. Get a high quality free agent. 2, I would prefer them to, and the draft stuff, actually, I can't even say that because we don't know where they'll pick. But right now, early on, I'm a kind of a fan of Banchero. So if they could get him and he's available, I want them to get him. 3, I'd like them to get a legitimate lob threat that can play, or a legitimate big guy at center that can play the majority of the game. Marvin Bagley, I think, is going to be a key piece off the bench, but his defense keeps him from being able to play like long, strong minutes for a contending team or a playoff team for a long time. Also, his injury concerns. He's already hurt right now. So I don't think he'll ever be a starter, but I think he can be a high-quality six-man off the bench. I think the Pistons need to go get a center this offseason and move Isaiah Stewart also to the bench, a guy who can get off the ground, provide a presence around the rim, both offensively and defensively. 4, I don't know if this counts as a wish list, but I'm going to throw it in there. Killian Hayes to continue to develop his offensive game and what we've seen over the past month or so, continue to work on that and take it to the next level and show that it's not a fluke, what we've seen over the past month. And 5, my 5th thing on the wish list would be Cade to simply get stronger with the ball in his hands and simply get stronger in general. I feel like that's really what's holding him back the most right now from reaching his top tier potential. Obviously, he needs to be able to hit consistently from beyond the arc, but I just simply think that him getting stronger and getting a stronger handle will make it to where, 1, he'll probably draw more fouls, and 2, he won't have as many turnovers, because a lot of his turnovers simply come from him losing control of the ball. And like when he gets pushed or slapped on the arm, whatever, yes, he's getting fouled, but they're not going to call the foul every single time. And you have to be able to play through that kind of minor contact. So I feel like if he gets stronger and a stronger handle, that will really take away some of those concerns and let him take his game to the next level. So that's my top 5 offseason wish list. I know you said moves, but there's not really 5 moves that I think they need to make. I think they'll only make like 2 or 3 moves in general. So I just gave you some extra wish list things. Next one is from Mike Zazayan. I hope I said your name right. I'm sorry if I didn't. Which free agents do you expect Troy Weaver most likely target? Or who you worded this question? You're basically asking, who do you think that Troy Weaver will target this offseason? I think obviously it's going to be Jalen Brunson. We've already seen those reports. I think he'll be interested in Miles Bridges, even though Miles Bridges is going to be a little bit of a trickier one because he's a restricted free agent. So if you do offer him a contract, you'll simply be like waiting for 3 days, and guys could be signed in those 3 days. And then if he says no, you basically missed out on 3 days. So it's like a trickier game there, especially if the Hornets match, like I said, it would definitely suck. So, and he's probably going to get a bag. So it's going to be trickier with him. But those are the guys I expect to be on the top of Troy Weaver's free agent list. Also, who would I want to personally see in a Pistons uniform from this offseason? I would like Miles Bridges and another center that I think would fit well if he accepts that role and just be either a backup or a low usage center, as a starting center, I should say, is old Piston Andre Drummond. Andre, I think in his role that he's doing now, people are starting to like him a lot more, and people are starting to see that he provides a lot of value because he's incredibly skilled. If you just keep him in a small role and limit his usage, tell him what he needs to be doing out there. He's played really well for the Nets and the Philadelphia 76ers before getting to Philly. So I think he would be a nice fit for the Pistons. Probably coming off the bench, but even as a low usage starting center, now that the Pistons have a clear guy at the top and a bunch of other guys who would come before him, he would know, as long as he knows his role, I think he would be a good fit for the Pistons. But yeah, that's who I'm looking at. I don't really have any other guys because, again, I don't think the Pistons are going to make a lot of moves. I think they're only going to make like 2 or 3 moves. They're going to add a guy in the draft, obviously at the top. They're going to probably try to make one big signing, and then maybe like one smaller signing. But I don't expect them to really revamp the roster completely. I don't see that happening. I think they're just going to go with player development, add a guy in the draft, trade Jeremy Polley for picks is what I'm going to assume. They're not going to get like a high quality guy in return, and then make a signing in free agency. So that's why I expect that in this offseason. When we come back, I'll finish answering all of the questions that you guys have sent in to be heard on the Mailbag podcast. But first, I have to tell you guys about another one of our sponsors, your guys' favorite sponsor, Built Bar. This is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right, and it's thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not even really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. And have you guys tried the Puffs Built Bar? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting protein bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're an absolute treat. And they're covered in 100% real chocolate. And it's not just the Puffs bars, all Built bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, 100% real chocolate. And despite that, they're still low calorie and high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They're better, they taste better, and they're simply just better for you. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 2 to 300 calories and 30 grams of sugar and dozens of net carbs. If you go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart, you'll be absolutely blown away. Again, high protein, low calories, high fiber, low carbs. It's listed at 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. And despite it being 100% real chocolate and still being healthy, they also have all kinds of flavors that make it incredibly tasty. Mint brownie, coconut almond, new flavor this month, white chocolate cookies and cream, my favorite, peanut butter brownie. You guys also have cherry barcia, strawberry, raspberry, blueberry, all kinds of flavors. Simply go check out built.com and you'll see all those flavors along with the limited time flavors that they're coming out with all the time. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they pull it off every single time. So go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, go to built.com to use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you have not already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. On the road to 3,000 subscribers, you guys get all that jazz. We've said it many, many times. Again, if you haven't done it already, do it for me. I'd really appreciate it. Best way to support the podcast. Let's go ahead and finish out these questions. Oh, actually, real quick. Those of you guys who watch on YouTube, I've had a lot of you guys ask about this jacket I'm wearing, this like Pistons jacket I have on. I have to ask my fiance. I'll be sure to get back to you guys on the next episode. This is supposed to be like the underneath of another jacket that goes over it, but I took the one that goes over off of it. I actually like it just like this. I've had a lot of you guys actually comment and tweet at me asking where you guys can find it. So my fiance got it for me. I definitely will reach out to her after this because she's not home right now. So I'll ask her after this episode, and then I'll reach out to you guys next episode and let you guys know where you guys can find it, because this really is a nice hoodie or a jacket. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, I just want to tell you guys, like, I have had a lot of people reaching out asking me to tell them where I've gotten this from. But anyways, let's go ahead and answer more of these questions. Try to fit all of them in before the end of the podcast. Next one from Gary Perry. Which player in the draft is the best fit for the Detroit Pistons? I think, I've said this many times already. I've just started doing my base level scouting. I've told you guys this like last week. I'm doing Paolo Banchero right now. I'm not going to lie to you guys. When we record his episode, probably next week, you guys will see. But I'm really liking what I saw from him. I really like him as a prospect. But overall, the Pistons don't have like a need or fit that you have to fit. Their fit is simply best player. Their fit is needing talent. That's their fit. So basically, all the questions you need to ask is, are you good? Yes. Are you the best player at this spot at this pick? Yes. Okay, we're picking you. That should all be the questions they ask. They shouldn't care if he's a guard. They shouldn't care if he's a center. They shouldn't care if he's a forward. Shouldn't care if he's 5'8". Shouldn't care if he's 7'8". If you're the best player at that spot, the best talent at that spot, they need to draft him, because the Pistons need talent. That's what they need. Nobody on this team besides Cade Cunningham should stop them from drafting the best player available. If they thought that it didn't work with Cade, that's the only stoppage. But no one can't fit with Cade. Cade is like, he's like the perfect guy to have because he can fit everywhere. So that's my best fit for the Pistons in the draft. If you want to know a player specifically, I'd have to wait until the lottery to really get like a realistic idea. And also I'd have to do more deep dive scouting on more players. Right now, I'm just simply doing Banchero. We'll get into more guys moving forward, and then maybe I'll have a better answer for you guys in a few weeks. Next question is from Steve Cook. He jokingly says, "Why do you hate Sadiq? LOL." I don't get it, man. I don't get why I get told that I hate Sadiq by certain people. I literally have given Sadiq nonstop praise for proving me wrong. I've said multiple times he's proven me wrong. I'm happy about it. Like, I don't get it, Steve. I don't get it, man. Why do people continue to say this? But anyways, you say, seriously, what is Beef Stew's ceiling? His ceiling, I think, is a nice starter, is an okay starter. I think that's the absolute ceiling. Again, some people are higher on Beef Stew than me. I'm not. I think his limitations at the rim and his ability to finish and his limitations athletically really keep him from being like an all-star center or something. Also, his inability to really shoot from beyond the arc or in the mid-range, or reluctance to, either way. I know he's been hitting threes over the last 3 games, but again, I'm old enough to remember last year. I'm not going to get fooled over that. I'm going to need him to see him actually try to shoot threes for more than 2 weeks before I believe it. But yeah, I think his ceiling is just simply a nice starter. I think his likely outcome is a high-quality backup. But if we're talking about his absolute ceiling, I think it's just a nice starter somewhere. Next question is from Gary Perry again. Will Jeremy Grant be traded? Is the trade market for him going to be good? Yes, I think Jeremy Grant will be traded. I think that's quite obvious. I think everyone agrees that he'll be traded in the offseason. Will the market be good for him? I think it'll be okay. I think they're going to get the same trade offer they got from the Portland Trailblazers in the offseason. It depends where that Pelicans pick ends up that the Trailblazers own. If it ends in the top 10 somewhere, then you're looking at a really good package. If it's somewhere like 10 to 14 or 11 to 14, now you're looking at like, okay, it's a fine package, but maybe not like the best of what you wanted to have. And it looks like that I tweeted this out after the Mavs game. Jeremy stayed back and talked with those Mavs players for a little bit longer than you think. There's going to be a lot of teams interested in. Portland seems to be very high on the list, and everyone assumes Portland because him and Dame Lillard are very tight, and they're the main team pushing really hard. I told you guys that on the deadline episode. They were pushing really hard for Jeremy. So Portland seems like the likeliest spot and the team that's going to push hardest for him. But you never know. The Mavs could want to go after him in a potential sign and trade with Jalen Brunson. There may be other teams that are interested in him. Who knows? So I think the trade market will be decent for him. But I don't know if it's going to be any better than what they got the trade deadline. I think if you think what they got the trade deadline was good enough, I think you'll like it. I don't think any team is just going to go way above what they did at the trade deadline. I think it's going to be basically the same. But we'll see what happens. I don't know. Who knows? Next question is from, I can't say your Twitter name. At least I don't really want to try to pronounce it because it may not be suitable. But it says, with Killian starting to form into the player we thought he may be, who would be a good fit next to him and Cade? Despite me being a big Killian Hayes guy, and no doubt his last month or so, month and a half has been really impressive and really encouraging for what I believe Killian can be. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that he's already stamped himself. Oh, yep, he's next to Cade. He's proven that. No, he hasn't. He hasn't done that yet. Now, is he showing signs of potentially being able to do that now with his play over the last few weeks, over the past month or so? Yes, he has. He's absolutely done that. And it gives you reason to believe in that. I think you'll have to wait till next season and see if it's something that wasn't a fluke and he actually improves on that. If it does, then okay, yeah, he's the guy next to there. But I think it's incredibly too early. And even me as a big Killian Hayes believer, I'm not going to sit here and act like that he's the guy. He's proving now that he needs to be right next to Cade. He still needs to do more than that. It's going to take more than just a month and a half of the end of the season for me to believe that completely now, despite me being a big fan of his and really believing in his future. But let's just say, okay, next year he proves it and it's him and Cade. Who would be a good fit next to Cade and Killian? A guy who can just go get buckets and spread the floor. Like a guy who can score off-ball screens, score from beyond the arc. A big wing. I really want the Pistons to stack up on big wings. So basically just like a big wing who can score off ball tremendously and is athletic. Miles Bridges. that's sorry. I don't know what got into me there. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking there. Let me know what you guys are thinking though. Next question. These ones are coming from YouTube. Let me refresh the page real quick so I don't want to miss any of you guys' questions in case more came. All 3 of these are from Pistons Mike. So we're going to get these in and then we'll wrap up the podcast real quick. So we'll go faster here. First one. Will the Pistons make the playoffs next year? No, I don't think they'll make the playoffs next year. I think they'll compete for the play-in and potentially be in the play-in, but I don't think they'll make the playoffs. I'm at least with me being objective. Now, in offseason, if they do something crazy in the offseason, now we're talking different things, but I don't think so right now. Next question, can the Pistons attract all-stars this free agency because of Cade? Potentially. Who you consider all-star? Like, do you think Miles Bridges is an all-star talent? If so, I think they can attract him. Potentially DeAndre Ayton. Do you think Jalen Brunson could be an all-star talent? Because I think they can get him. But specifically this free agency, no, probably if you don't consider those guys. In the future, I 100% believe Cade's going to attract guys. Guys like playing with Cade. They've been talking about Cade a lot. A lot of the superstars respect him and talk to him after games, talked about him on platforms. So I do think he'll attract guys. And the last question will be, will it be a disappointment if the Pistons didn't make the playoffs or play-in tournament next season? Yeah, I think it'll be a disappointment if they're at least not in the play-in tournament. I think that's the goal for them. Not the playoffs, but at least the play-in tournament. I think that's the goal. And I think that will be achievable with Cade. If everyone takes another step and they improve this offseason with picking up a guy in the free agency, picking up the right pick in the draft, the Jeremy Grant trade. I think that they can compete for the play-in and be in the play-in. If they do not make the play-in, I think right now that's the goal. That would be a disappointment, and they would fall short of their expectations. So that's my thought on that, though. But that's all the questions. If you guys want to hear your question heard on the podcast, you're trying to figure out how I can get on here. Again, like I said, you guys can tweet at me over on Twitter. You can comment on the YouTube channel. Or if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, go down below, leave a 5-star rating, and leave a question. And I'll answer it on the next podcast or in the next mailbag podcast. But thank you for all you guys who did submit a question. I'm happy that we were able to get through all of your guys' questions. I had a lot of fun with it. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. Make Locked On NBA your second listen of every single day. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Again, if you haven't already, head to our YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. Best way to support the podcast. Yada, 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 yada. You guys get all of that. Until the next one, you guys enjoy your weekend. I'll see you guys on Monday. Enjoy the Pistons' final home game tonight. I'm thinking I'm going to be there. I'd suggest for all you guys to get out there for the final home game of the year. Again, have fun with it. You guys are going to be missing Pistons basketball in a few weeks. So if you guys can make it to the city, go to this game. Have a lot of fun. Stay safe. And I'll see you guys on Monday. Peace out, everybody.